Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. Whatever that means, I still don't know, but I love Xevious' drawing. Xevious from Twitter. Find him. His name starts with an X. Yes, I love this drawing. Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here coming at you, Robcasting at you from the Robservatory, and this is Robservations episode number 416. And this is the last day I'm going to say this, because by tomorrow it will be too late. But I want to remind all of you that the Burnettwork and this show, Robservations and Whining About Movies, is giving away a JBL Bar 9.1 soundbar with Dolby Atmos that has not even been introduced to the public yet. It doesn't officially hit the marketplace until May 31st. And thank you to Connie at Harman International's Experiential Engagement Department who made this giveaway possible. I mean, come on, you got to love Connie. She helped John Campy out when he destroyed his headphones on air. She hooked him up with a new pair. And when I approached her about doing a giveaway for the 400th episode and, of course, my birthday, she agreed. So thank you, Harman International. Thank you, Samsung, because you're the overlords of Harman International. And thank you, JBL, who Harman International oversees, for making this giveaway possible. It's a great piece of gear. If you just go down into the description of this very chat, you can find a link, follow it. No purchase necessary. Enter as many times as you want. As you know, tomorrow is my birthday, and rather than get presents, I'm giving presents. Well, I mean, I'm sure I'll get presents too, but giving away presents is always fun, and this is an almost $1,000 value. So, how cool is that? I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, speaking of presents, I got to give it up to our man, Trinidad. Trinidad The Island Man, yes sir, Trinidad The Island Man sent me an early birthday gift. Actually, an early birthday gift that is also socially, respectable, socially conscious. He sent me a number of bottles of, get this, quarantine wine. I don't know if you can see it there. You can see the quarantine wine, which is an Oregon Pinot Noir, and 100% of the profits of this wine go to COVID-19 first responders. This is an Oregon wine. You can find them at officialquarantinewine.com. And by the way, Trinidad did not say that I had to say anything about them. He just sent me this wine. And here is their this came with the wine. Quarantine wine with an impact. There's a whole message about the people that make this wine. And I want to thank him for that. I think it's very cool that this company, actually I should probably put on my glasses and find out where, if there's any more information. I didn't do a very good job putting on my glasses, to be honest. 100% of profits will go to COVID-19 response charities, organizations, and grassroots efforts. This is from Knocking Point Wine and the Kutchers. I guess this is Ashton Kutcher. Wow, the Kutchers. And so, look at that. There's a picture of the Kutchers on the back. And you know what? That lady right there is the star of the Wachowskis' Jupiter Ascending, a movie that I like probably more than most people. Now, I don't think it would be fair to put this wine on the show without having already opened it. So I'm going to pour myself a glass. I should say that I'm less than 12 hours away from the beginning of my birthday. And if I lived in a different time zone, say Korea, it would already be my birthday. So here's to me. But also here's to Trinidad the Island Man. And here is to Official Quarantine Wine, wine with an impact. Very good to the Kutchers. Here, I didn't even realize it was Ashton Kutcher and his lovely wife, Mila Kunis. Is she Mila Kutcher? Actually, she wouldn't even have to change her monogram to Yves Saint Laurent bags, would she? Anyway, here's Ooh, it's tasty. It's a very fine Pinot. Very refreshing. So there you go. And yeah, I had a little bit of a water problem. That's why I had to delay the show a little bit because, you know me, I have to have my ice water too. Anyway, there's lots to talk about today. But you know what? I'm going to just jump in to the lead story because this cracks me up. And I'll tell you why. First of all, I got to share it. This was reported by popularmechanics.com today, and it's by Kyle Mizukami. Kyle Mizukami. And again, this was on popularmechanics.com because I leave no stone unturned for you guys. I'm constantly scouring the web for interesting stories that I can observe and report on. And this would be one of them. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. The Space Force, that's right, our Space Force, receives its KOBAYASHI MARU space tracking system. Another Star Trek reference? Okay, now they're just messing with us. Again, this dropped today. The Air Force named the new software KOBAYASHI MARU, designed to monitor man-made objects in space. The program was named after the KOBAYASHI MARU simulation, a supposedly unwinnable scenario in the Star Trek universe. The software package will replace 40-year-old legacy systems and help tie in the Space Force into America's Five Eyes allies. So you get a Spectre reference, a James Bond Spectre reference, and a KOBAYASHI MARU reference here. James Bond and Star Trek, what more do I want? The U.S. Space Force announced the development of a brand new software package designed to track and monitor objects in space. Dubbed KOBAYASHI MARU, the cloud-based program was designed to modernize the way the U.S. Air Force and now the U.S. Space Force interoperates in space, but with its allies in the Five Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance. The package, developed by Silicon Valley-based Palantir. I mean, could we have more franchise references in this? Palantir, which actually is kind of cool. Palantir Systems, get it? I get it. Is supposed to simplify the tracking of objects in space. It also provides data streaming and storage technologies for the U.S. Space Force, allowing it easily access key data on objects circling the Earth. The Air Force in 2019 described it as providing, quote, a real-time data display of high-interest information pertaining to the global space community, such as upcoming space launches, potential satellite conjunctions, atmospheric reentries of objects in space, sensor status, and other pertinent information. The KOBAYASHI MARU is particularly designed to share space data with allies, enhancing space domain awareness among all. The Five Eyes Alliance, composed of the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, operates on various aspects of intelligence, from human intelligence, spies, to space intelligence, with the goal of sharing the information for use against common adversaries. This new system allows other non-American members of the Alliance to access American-gathered space data in a streamlined fashion. The system is named after the KOBAYASHI MARU simulation, an exercise all cadets at Starfleet's or Star Trek's fictional Starfleet Academy must participate in. The simulation places a starship captain in an unwinnable situation as a test of mettle and testing a captain's ability to in the face of certain death. According to a 2019 article, the Air Force named the program KOBAYASHI MARU after Kirk's famous bending of the simulation rules. The service felt strongly that the existing software procurement system was too slow and bureaucratic to produce the software it needed. The service wanted to bypass the bureaucracy, bending its own rules, in order to get the new space software up and running. The KOBAYASHI MARU is yet another space pop culture reference for the Air Force Space Force. The Space Force's official logo bears resemblance to the logo of the Star Trek's United Federation of Planets. The Space Force also features a Space Operations Center, or SPOC, which is way too much like Spock to be a coincidence. But Star Trek isn't the only pop culture reference to find a home in the Space Force. The service also has the Kessel Run, a software division named after the smuggling route used by Star Wars Millennium Falcon. The Space Force is actually, I guess it would be Han Solo. He was just in the Millennium Falcon, but okay, it wasn't the Millennium Falcon who decided to do the Kessel Run. But anyway, The Space Force is also developing 2 software packages named after science fiction video games: Star Fox, which provides accurate and timely radio frequency windows for military, commercial, and mission partners, and Metroid, a high-interest event tracker that provides information on such events across the Department of Defense space community. Now, I get it. The actual bending of the rules, and they wanted to cut past the bureaucracy, but I don't know if I would want our space early warning system or space monitoring system to actually be named after the Kobayashi Maru. A no-win scenario. The making of the software was, calling it the Kobayashi Maru, bending the rules, moving past all the bureaucracy. That makes sense, but the actual finished software to me, I don't know if we should be calling it that. I don't know. It's kind of like, I kind of feel that when the American space program was going to christen their first space shuttle, and Star Trek fans rallied and they gave the first space shuttle the name Enterprise. All well and good, right? Problem was, that space shuttle was never actually going to be in space. It was a test bed shuttle that was only ever going to be used, not in orbit. And so, wouldn't you, as Star Trek fans, want the Enterprise to be the first shuttle that actually made it into space? I guess that, once again, in my mind, the Kobayashi Maru, naming the software the Kobayashi Maru seems, I don't know, perhaps not the best name in the world, but we'll see. Doesn't matter. All it needs to do is work, right? It just needs to work. And as long as it works, hey, good on them. So let's hear it for the Kobayashi Maru space defense system. Space tracking system. I do like the fact that, they use video games and Star Wars and Star Trek and Palantir, Lord of the Rings, to name all of these things. It seems like something I would do when I was 12, and I like to see it carried forward into some of the most, probably some of the most important systems that we have. So good on them. Go Space Force. I wonder if they'll take a middle-aged man with one foot in his grave. Because I want to join the Space Force. I would totally join the Space Force given an opportunity to do so. Sign me up. There's also more to discuss. There was an article today in The Hollywood Reporter about Tennant and Mulan opening in movie theaters. Why Tennant and Mulan can succeed even if theaters dramatically slash seating. This was written by Pamela McClintock. It was published at 7:30 this morning. Hollywood studios and theater owners would normally never discuss what's a taboo topic: the millions of seats across the U.S. that remain empty even when the box office is booming. But the issue of capacity has become of paramount import. I see what they did there. During the age of COVID-19, as the entertainment industry sets its sights on cinemas, hopefully reopening in time for Christopher Nolan's Tenet on July 17th. Now, for those of you who aren't keeping score, I can't wait for this movie. I loved Inception. I saw it 8 times in the theater. I loved it. I can't wait to see Tenet. It looks terrific. I saw that IMAX preview. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it looks really interesting. You can roll back time like in sections. Like you could zap somebody sitting next to you and they can go back in time or something. I have no idea. But it looks amazing. And I'll wear a scuba suit with a rebreather as long as it lasts 2.5 hours. I'm there. I'm going. If it's opened, if I can see it in IMAX, I'm going. Nolan has been insistent that Warner Brothers stick to the date as a symbol of the importance of the cinematic experience, despite the risks of launching a $200 million film amid uncertain times. Movie theaters are expected to dramatically slash the number of consumers allowed in any given auditorium. It could be anywhere from 20 to 50% in what's come to be known as checkered seating. But can a studio score a box office hit amid a landscape where half or more theater seats sit empty? If historical trends are any indication, the answer is yes. Even at reduced capacity because of social distancing, there would be plenty of seats for the summer release schedule the way it is mapped out now, says Paramount President of Domestic Distribution Chris Aronson, who is prepping for the SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run, which is set to debut August 7th following Tennant and Disney's big-budget Mulan on July 24th. The number of box office sources who spoke with the Hollywood Reporter say it isn't unusual for 50% of seats at U.S. theaters to remain empty on the weekends without dampening business overall. And last week, the Walt Disney Company's CEO, Bob Chapek, in advocating for Mulan's release, said capacity generally runs at 25% Monday through Friday afternoon. There are at least 40,613 movie screens in the U.S., according to the National Association of Theater Owners. Not all first-run cinemas, however. There could be as many as 25 million to 30 million seats available a day for a new Hollywood movie, and 79 million to 90 million seats on the weekend, according to analysts. The calculation is based upon a conservative average of 150 seats per screen and 5 showtimes a day, the industry norm for big titles. There are no exact stats on the number of seats. Not even the biggest weekends have come close to reaching those benchmarks. When Disney and Marvel Studios' Avengers Endgame debuted to a record-shattering $357.1 million domestically in the spring of 2019, overall revenue for the frame came in at an all-time best of $402.1 million, according to ComScore. The feat was accomplished after filling 44 million seats if using the average ticket price of $9.16. Movie theaters aren't like sold-out Broadway shows, says another distribution executive. I'm happy to max out at any capacity we have to abide by, says Ted Mundorf, who was recently named president and COO of ArcLight Cinemas after running Landmark. It means people want to come back to the movies, and 50% would be a very healthy crowd. ArcLight and other theater owners could end up leaving every other row empty, as well as keep empty seats between patrons in the alternating rows. They're also planning on increased sanitary measures. Tennant has been the subject of intense speculation in terms of whether it will move at the 11th hour, particularly if New York and Los Angeles cinemas can't resume business. It's the only spring or early summer Hollywood tentpole that has stuck to its original date. Mulan's original release date was March 26th. While a smattering of theaters have begun or are planning to reopen in more than a dozen states where shelter-in-place orders have been eased, the bigger circuits are holding off. If all goes as planned, Tenet could have access to an unheard-of number of theaters for a Nolan movie. Disney's 2019 blockbuster The Lion King is the current record holder for the widest opening location count, or 4,752 sites. That's amazing. Nolan's last film, Dunkirk, took in $50.5 million when opening in 3,720 theaters in July of 2017, while Interstellar launched to $47.5 million from 3,561 locations in 2014. In his May 11th interview with CNBC's Squawk Alley, Chapek indicated there will be plenty of room for Mulan a week later, and analysts agree. While the social distancing protocols that theaters will enact will most certainly limit an individual auditorium's capacity in the early months of the relaunch, this will be more than offset by the sheer number of screens within a multiplex that can be devoted to what is expected to be initially a reduced inventory of brand new films, says Paul Daragabedian of ComScore. Daragabedian adds, everyone understands that for any brick-and-mortar business in the early days of a relaunch, reduced capacity will be a mandated way of life, and not a reflection of a lack of interest or enthusiasm for the business themselves, be it a restaurant, bar, or movie theater. So there you go. Very interesting. Now, we don't know what's going to go on here in Los Angeles. I'm hoping... Please open the theaters. I would really like them to open the theaters. I really want to see this movie, but only, again, if it's measured and safe. That's what it's all about. I want to see a measured and safe response. All anybody wants is to be safe, but I do want to see the movies. I desperately want to go back to the movie theater. I want to see Mulan. I want to see Wonder Woman. I want to see, most of all, Tenet. It's that and No Time to Die were my two most eagerly awaited movies of this year, and I cannot wait. But again, you have to be safe. Now, here's the thing. There's not a lot of movies that are going to be playing, so when you have a big theater, I think there's 16 cinemas at the ArcLight here in Pasadena, they could open Tenet at all of those theaters, because that would be the only movie playing. Now, they would be able to handle any crowds that would come in, And I mean, I don't know how effective that would be. I don't know if that's even going to be possible, but it's definitely something that they could do. Do I want the United States to open up? Of course. Of course I do. But I want everybody back to work. I want my life to go back to normal. To be honest with you all, yesterday was the first time, and I read Zach Stentz, my friend Zach Stentz, wrote about this. Yesterday was the first time I really actually felt confined and annoyed, and I do have work to do. I still have that Bill Sienkiewicz interview to get up. Dieter Bastian has sent me some videos I want to get up. There's other things I want to be doing, but I just couldn't muster up enough. I mean, it was really interesting. I just felt like this oppressive weight that came out of nowhere. I mean, I've been so busy working on other things, I haven't allowed myself to really feel the weight of all this. I mean, it's been, November. Our stay-at-home order started March 19th, and my birthday's tomorrow, and I can't, I'm not gonna have a party or anything like that. Obviously, 2 years ago I had a pretty big party here at the house, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm just not gonna have another party. And you think, like, how many birthdays do you have left and all that? I don't know, but I'm still maintaining my cheerful disposition, and I'm still the chancellor of cheerfulness. I am, but sometimes, after you do all this work, it's like I had projects I was in the middle of. We're trying to sell Tango Shalom. There's all this work that I was doing. We did get the Blu-ray of Hills Run Red finished. Dave Parker and I did, and that was a pretty good distraction for the better part of 5 weeks. That was something I had to work on. I have worked on 2 episodes of the Netflix show that I've been working on. That was good. But now I just feel like, well, with the stay-at-home order extended indefinitely, you're still like, can I go out to a bar? Can I go out to a restaurant? Is it safe to do that? We don't know. There's the weird symptoms they're seeing in kids. I don't know. I just want everybody to be safe and all that. But the weight of wanting normalcy is it does even weigh heavily on me. Even doing these chats, I have to be cheerful. You have to have energy. You have to be ready. You have to get up and be like, okay, I'm ready to go. I didn't do the John Campea show today. I'm not doing the John Campea show tomorrow. He's either doing something or I don't know. Might want to do a solo show. But he said tomorrow he won't be needing me, so I won't be doing that. And which I guess I can start day drinking before, which I really shouldn't do. But this is quite a tasty glass of wine, I must say. But even it's like there's still cool stuff. Do you guys know about the Sandman Audiobook? I mean, my God, what a cool thing. I can't wait for the Sandman audio drama to drop or whatever it is. It looks good to me. I mean, I can't wait. But thank God for all of you, because you know what? You guys have not let me down. You guys and girls and gentle beings across the 28 known galaxies. I keep getting letters. Everybody's sending me letters, and I very, very much appreciate it. I really do appreciate it, because one of the singular joys over this time in quarantine has been to get your letters. And if nothing else, your letters, your missives or tweets or whatever have kept me going. They've always put a smile on my face, and even if I'm feeling a little down, I have always loved reading your letters. And to that effect, or to that end, Jason Bennett is here. Jason Bennett says, "The Headhunter," from 2018, was a gorgeous, confined tale of a monster hunter with fantastic practical effects and a tight script for a confined story. I have not seen this. Made for $30,000, it looks like $3 million or even a lot more. With the incredibly swift rise in the cost of studio filmmaking and no apparent lessons learned on lower budget affairs, is it possible that these studios have found new methods of cooking the books and falsely inflating budgets to keep more of the loot? Case in point, Peter Jackson is suing New Line to get paid because New Line claimed the series that had a total budget of $280 million and made $3 billion at the box office, and with massive home video sales, was a franchise that was not profitable. This is not a new problem, and likely why agents gilded their talent to get profit off the gross up front. Well, Jason, that is a lot to unpack. But yeah, as I could tell people that I was a producer on Agent Cody Banks. I have profit participation in that movie. That movie will never make a profit. It just never will. And what happens is, and this is perfectly legal, one of the things that people don't understand, when a studio makes a movie, they get to charge their overhead to run the whole studio, even though the studio might, and everybody working at the studio, how many people actually work on the film? But because it's a New Line movie, New Line gets to charge its overhead for whatever during the time its operating costs. They can put that into the budget and get away with it. It's totally legit. And it has nothing to do with necessarily the making of the film, but that's what studio accounting is for. I'll tell you an example that happened in my own life. I've never made a dime off the movie I made, Free Enterprise. Not a dime. And I made money. I got paid while I was making it, and I got paid for my screenplay. But I didn't make a dime after that. And what was interesting was our distributor, Regent Entertainment, they took it to the Cannes Film Festival to sell it in their film market. Now, Regent had a number of other films that they were selling. Now, what they do is the cost, I think it was something like $300,000. It cost them $300,000 to go to Cannes and participate in that festival. Well, all the movies that they were selling there, ours sold the best for them. And they even bundled it with other movies for a home video deal that they made, but ours was the anchor of that deal. But what they do is they charge that $300 or $300,000 to every movie. So every movie is covering the costs of their trip to Cannes. So it's almost like double dipping, triple dipping. Now, that's part of business. You know, you can't say, well, you weren't the only movie, but then you would say, well, okay, but it was $300,000 to take your movie. And they do that to all the movies that they have, and that's where the studio accounting comes into play. And it's not exactly, I mean, I don't think it's all on the up and up, and remember, if a movie grosses, if its gross is, say, you make a movie for like Lord of the Rings, or a movie that costs $100 million and it grosses $1 billion, the studio doesn't get all of that money. You know, the studio gets a percentage of that money based on. Not even, I don't think they even get maybe a little over half or something. And then they've got the production costs of the movie. There's marketing. So you would think on $1 billion, when some movie makes $1 billion, that, ooh, that's a lot of money. But it's how much of that money actually gets filtered back to the studio. And these movies are they're very expensive to make. And also, as I've talked about a lot on this show before, the studios aren't sitting on a pile of cash that's theirs. You know, they're borrowing that money, so there's interest payments that they have to make, and the studio overhead is legit. I mean, the studio overhead, that's where their marketing departments are, and so, you know, it's pretty crazy. And also there's distribution costs, and yes, studio accounting is very, I mean, it's not exactly the most up and up thing in the world, but it's also not as crooked as you might think it is. It's sort of somewhere in between. Kind of like the truth. There's his story, there's her story, and then there's the truth. So it's always somewhere in between. It's very Rashomon for as far as a movie reference goes. But yeah, I mean, look, one of the things that I think is we're actually going to start seeing is now we have worldwide modes of distribution, especially independent filmmakers. My friend Carrie David, who I interviewed on the 400th show, she had a pay-per-view event for her documentary, Breaking Their Silence, Women on the Front Line of the Poaching War. And by the way, she had 2 pay-per-view events. One was last week. I think the next one, it's either tonight or tomorrow. If you want to see a terrific documentary that you don't see normally covered, that's women who are actually out there in Africa, and it's dealing with wet markets and the illegal wildlife trade, and how we're even in this COVID-19 debacle. This documentary is a fantastic look. I mean, she went to Africa. What they're doing is they're doing a pay-per-view event on Vimeo. They did one last week, and I wholeheartedly support supporting independent filmmakers. This is a terrific documentary, and it is absolutely worth supporting. It gets my highest recommendation. But I do think what's going to be interesting, especially for independent filmmakers, unless you're Jason Blum, who has an amazing model working in that $5 million range. They've got Universal to distribute, which is what you want, worldwide reach. It's amazing. But for independent filmmakers who are making movies for $30,000, $40,000, if you're Shane Carruth making the next Primer or something like that, you can distribute your own movies and be profitable. Now, the problem is piracy. If you've made a horror film, horror movies, they're a lot of people pirate those films. They're all obviously they have a huge audience. I keep harping on my birthday's tomorrow. My friend Mary Forrest, my dear friend Mary Forrest, her birthday is today, and the great Jon Schnepp's birthday would have been Saturday. He would have been 53 years old on Saturday, May 16th. Here's to the two of you, my friends. One is here, one is not. But happy birthday. Thing about Jon Schnepp was he spent years of his life making The Death of Superman Lives What Happened with his co-producer, his producing partner, Holly Payne. And, you know, the film was illegally downloaded over 1 million times. And he went after those people, and he thought that our community would be self-policing and would support him because he had spent money. He owed his investors money. He had investors that gave him money to make that movie, and he was hoping in terms of digital download and sales of the Blu-ray that he would get his money back. I think he eventually did pay off his investors, but he was very disappointed. Those 1 million illegal downloads was $1 million or more, a lot more money actually than $1 million out of his pocket. And had he not passed away, he would have used that money to make more movies. So we live in a world where downloadable content, most people, especially younger people, don't value it at all. I'm not saying old people don't either, but especially when it comes to filmmaking, independent filmmakers could, if you like someone's work, you should support it. You should support it with your dollars because it keeps them going. Certainly, why do YouTubers do super chats or tips or all that? Because, I don't have any other way to buy equipment, and that's like John Campea puts an enormous amount of what he makes on his show into his gear. He's always trying to make his show better from a technical standpoint. And I really admire him for that. And I think other filmmakers, I think the wave of the future is once we have more secure networks where we can have filmmakers, they can promote their own movies. Like if I had like this, I always promote what I'm doing, The Hills Run Red's coming out. But imagine if I was making something new, if I had a film that I could take all of you through. I hope to, by the way. The next year or two, I have a plan that I would like to make a movie, and I would take everybody here through the entire process of making that movie. Now, they've done it on Project Greenlight, but, I think I have a unique perspective in the sense that I've worked in DVD special feature production for a long time, and I've made films, produced movies, directed movies, that kind of thing, and it would be really interesting. And then, maybe even figure out a way where we're all involved in financing the film. I mean, I think that would be a really interesting process. I think it would be like doing a master class. Would you pay $50 or $100 for a special over the course of a year, watch every phase of production of a movie that you had actually had a hand in making? Something along those lines. I mean, that's what's going to be available to us in the future. So hopefully maybe, Jason, we can get around those things. But yes, look, there's a lot of ways that obviously New Line should have made nice with Peter Jackson. I'll tell you something that really bothers me. Peter Jackson wanted to go in, and they obviously wanted to re-release Lord of the Rings in 4K. And Peter Jackson wanted to make a new documentary about his experience, and he wanted to get something like $20 million from the studio to make the documentary or whatever it was that he needed to do it right. And they had no interest. And when you think about how much those extended versions made on home video, it's crazy. So even Peter Jackson, the studios are no longer even interested in that. All they're interested in, and by the way, now with streaming services, you could repurpose that documentary and it would be what great content. I mean, I've often thought that if there was more interest in Superman Returns, I could make a 10-hour show about the making of Superman Returns. I could go on HBO Max and be there forever for not a very large amount of cash. It'd be programming that I could make very effectively, And it would be like a reality show that takes you throughout the making of Superman Returns, if somebody was interested, because I was there. The same is true of Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I mean, we didn't get to finish that project, but we were the ones that shot the majority. I mean, we shot hundreds and hundreds of hours, but you never know. This new worldwide, where we live now, things are interesting. Anyway, the way it's shaping up. But I want to thank you for that letter. This one comes from, this is a tough one. Recite Madrid, Recite Madrid. What a cool name. It's REISSITE. Recite Madrid. Let's see, where did Recite Madrid's letter just go? Hang on. It's here. Greetings from Manila, Rob. Well, greetings right back at you. I came across your channel when Gary of Nerdrotic mentioned you in verisimilitude. Well, shouts out to Nerdrotic, Gary Beekler. I like Gary's channel, and we both have a very big fascination with action figures. Whenever I watch Nerdrotic's channel, I get distracted because I'm always trying to like blow up his image to see where he's moved action figures and stuff. I love it. I've been a regular viewer since. I was doing spring cleaning for the past week because of the quarantine, and I might say I've collected lots of stuff in a spare room, which my daughter calls the junk room. These are vintage knickknacks, books, comics, toys, and CD, DVDs that I don't use, read, or watch for the past few years. Now, a key takeaway from Marie Kondo's book is really to prioritize what we love and to give them the time. Therefore, I resolve, movies below 5 in IMDb shouldn't be watched unless it's a guilty pleasure. Books below 4.0 in Goodreads should be gone unless it has a great cover. Do you have books or DVDs that you haven't read or watched? I cannot tell a lie, I do. As a collector, can you really let go of that 98th graphic novel in your top 100 list when you've only read it once? P.S. I remember a spare Judge Dredd figure you have. Just kidding. Anyhow, advanced happy birthday and more power to all imagination connoisseurs. Well, Receipt, I don't know if that's right, but I want to thank you for that letter. What a great letter. Thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. Look, I got to tell you. Okay, I'll flat out. This place is full of stuff I probably don't need. I mean, I look at a lot of the graphic novels I have, like Justice League, the Detroit years. That's right here. Do I need that? Honestly, probably not. And if I look around at all of this stuff, do I need any of it? Probably not. I probably don't need... Does anybody need to collect anything? Tchotchkes, knickknacks? Do fans... Like, why do I collect action figures? Why do I want to get another Captain America action figure? Why? I mean, I have a quarter-scale Darth Vader from Hot Toys. I haven't even opened it yet. I think I might tomorrow on my birthday, though, because I really want to. It's really badass. I don't think we need any of these things, and ultimately, we can't take them with us. Why spend all this time slaving over a model of the Eagle? Like, the Eagle 2 has come out, the Laboratory Eagle model from round 2 came out. It's like this big. It's got the engine bells. I might have dropped the green on that because I wanted it. I've got another Eagle I haven't even built. I got how many Eagles do I have? I got like 8. I got 10 Eagle transporters. How many? So Marie Kondo is not wrong. And the thing is, though, does your stuff make you happy? Like, I love being surrounded by all this stuff. I love walking into the Robservatory, and I love just sitting here and I'll pull out a book off the shelf and I'll flip it open. Like, I can't tell the Fourth World Omnibus that's right here, this one right there. I can't tell you how many times I just look at this honking book on the bookshelf, Jack Kirby's Fourth World Saga, and I've pulled it out and just read like 10 or 20 pages out of it and put it back. I do that a lot. The JSAs that are right next to it. Infinite Crisis. Or I'll open one of these omnibuses, and before I know it, I should be setting up this show, and I'm halfway through it. And it truly gives me joy. Like unfettered, unapologetic joy. And some of this stuff, I have things in here that I've had, like the actual copies of things, like my Bijo Trumbull Trimble Concordance, the Star Trek Concordance. I have it. It's right over there. It's the one I bought when did that come out? 1976 with the wheel. Mine's a little battered, but most of my stuff is in pretty great shape. I've had that since I was 9. And it's the same book, and I've read that book 100 million times. So a lot of the stuff that I've accumulated here is quite old, and it's a lifetime of accumulation. Now, I do believe in curating my film collection. I'm going through things. One of the great things about doing whining about movies is like, okay, when was the last time I watched Near Dark? On my Blu-ray of Near Dark. Now, this Blu-ray is pretty expensive because it's out of print and you can't get it. And I could probably sell it for $60 or something. But that $60 is a night out with Elizabeth. We go get Mexican food, and that $60 is gone. But I have this Blu-ray, and it hasn't been remastered. And we got to watch it for whining about movies. So it's hard because, how much of this crap do you need? Like my comic book collection. Do I need comic books and I've got the same comic books that are also in the hard? No, I don't. I want to get rid of all my comics. I really do. Now, there are some comics that I could sell, like the first appearance of Deadpool. I should get that graded. It's in mint condition. I should grade it and then sell the graded version. That takes effort. It's $25 to get it graded, and it takes months. You have to wait for it. I've got my 75 long boxes of comics. I'm telling you, I'll bet you all but 5 boxes of long boxes of comics. I don't even care because I've either got them in hardcovers. Wouldn't matter. I wouldn't need any of them anymore. But it really depends. If the stuff brings you happiness, then you should keep it. But if it doesn't, get rid of it. There's going to come a time where I do feel that I should just read these things one more time and get rid of them and spend the rest of my life. But then I like walking in here. Like, I can't tell you during the time of this where you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, I can't go to a movie theater, how just walking in this room and going through my stuff has made me happy. And does that mean it's worthless? There's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of stuff in here that I could probably sell and put a down payment on a house or something. But then I wouldn't have it. I don't know. It's tough. It's hard. Hey, guess who wrote a letter? Vesna. Vesna wrote a letter. Vesna wrote a letter all the way from Sarajevo. Vesna, one of the cornerstones of the Post-Geek Singularity, one of the first imagination connoisseurs who kept coming back. Let's drink a toast to Vesna. I can because I'm having quarantine wine. Hello, Robert. I didn't write a letter for a while, not because I didn't have anything to say. Hey, I'm a woman. I always have something to say. But I really enjoyed others. Some of them were very wise and deep. This won't be anything like that, but it will be fun, especially for the male specimens of the audience. Uh-oh. Is this going to get this demonetized? Because this letter will be about boobs. Yes, you've read it right. Boobs. It's a part of female anatomy that we learned in biology class in primary school at the age of 10. And no, it wasn't the sex education, just regular biology. What is the difference between lizards and mammals and the difference between male and female, and that lesson was not sexual at all. We also did a resection of frogs to see internal organs, but that's for another topic. Let's go back to boobs and butts. Now, I admit I come from a different culture, but I don't remember my parents ever used to make me close my eyes when boobs and butts appear on the screen, especially if they are looking just fine. Or maybe they were just to engage the scene, so I just forgot they were even there. Seeing a naked human body is normal for us Europeans. One of our regular routines was going into museums and art galleries, even at an early age. And if those who are the heads of Disney don't know, there are a lot of naked human bodies in art galleries. A lot. The whole point of ancient Greek art is to present perfect human bodies, mostly men. I knew there is a reason I love that art especially. I saw boobs everywhere. And let me remind you, I was raised in a communist country. Not just in museums, but on TV shows, movies, comics, commercials, beaches, even in the newspaper. I don't mean Playboy, but a regular newspaper. And let me tell you something, none of us had nightmares of seeing boobs and butts. But we had nightmares of seeing violence, death, and bloody battles. Our rating standard is different in the U.S. than in the U.S. We have PG, PG-12, which are all the Marvel movies, PG-16, which are movies with violence like Bloodsport, Rocky, Rambo, and PG-18, which is an R rating in the U.S. Our rating system is mostly for violence, and children do have nightmares about that. Titanic was PG-12 here, not because of Kate Winslet's boobs, but because of the scene where people were drowning and freezing to death. Now, let me be completely clear. I'm not saying to anybody how to raise their children, and every child is with a different sensuality. I was sleeping like a baby after watching The Exorcist, but most of my friends were freaking out just seeing somebody donate blood. Every parent knows his kid, what he or she can watch or can't. That's why it's called parenting. If somebody else is deciding that instead of you, especially if it's a movie studio or a streaming service, it's wrong. For the more than 30 years we were watching Daryl Hannah's butt, kids that were born when Splash came out now have kids of their own, and nobody complained. We all saw Kate Winslet's breasts 23 years ago, and I think we all turned out to be pretty normal. The line of the tolerance for censorship has to be crossed somewhere, and mine is crossed with Hugh Jackman's ass. If Disney will put some stupid box to cover up Logan's butt in X-Men Origins, I would be really pissed. That nice Greek godlike shaped butt is the best part of that movie. And Jackman worked so hard to show it on screen. Putting a hair over that butt would be a spit on an afford and a sweat and blood of at least half a year's work out of an actor. And I want to see Wolverine, not Planet of the Apes. If I want to see an ape, I'll watch that movie. And one more thing. If parents think they can exit the room and leave a child alone to watch Disney Plus, guess what? As soon as they're out the door, they'll change the channel. I did that, and I bet many of you did that also. Parenting is not covering boobs and butts on the screen. Parenting is making healthy, honorable, and reasonable young people. Well, that's the rant for me today. Just the thought of a covered Logan's butt triggered my buttons, so I had to work it out. Sorry if my letter triggers some buttons also, although I wouldn't mind if it did. Wink, wink. So, Robert, to you and all my friends in the chat and beyond, stay healthy, happy, and horny. There's nothing wrong with that. Sincerely yours, Vesna. P.S. I wish you the best for your birthday and to see many boobs and butts. On screen, of course. Wink, wink. Well, Vesna, whenever you write in, it's a delightful letter. And I agree with you. I think it's very strange. I mean, our idea of sexuality in this country, how we're so puritanical about it, it's always sort of baffled me, sort of. I mean, I get it, but yeah, I was a horny kid. I got started early, and I thank God that one of the great things about growing up Jewish is there wasn't a whole lot of puritanical impulses when it came to that aspect of things. So it's great. This one comes from, again, Enterprise HNCC 1701H. Baron of Blueprints, greetings. First, are you familiar with Ed Whitefire's blueprints of the NCC 1701D? And if you are, between the Whitefire and Sternbach blueprints, which hold your preference? I am not, actually. I have the Sternbach blueprints. Secondly, since I see you wearing an Irish whiskey t-shirt starring Baby Yoda, I have to ask, do you own a Romulan Ale t-shirt? I do not. Please specify which one, since there are multiple variants. Well, okay, let me look at what you said. Ooh, I like that one. The We Love Fine is pretty cool. And let me see this one. Oh, they're both pretty cool. Wow, that's a tough call. Well, here, I'll let you guys decide. What do you think is cool? Here's one of them. I'll put this in the live chat. There's one. These are both very worthy shirts, I have to say. And here's the other one. One of them is a little more metal, I think. I think the second one here that I'm putting in the chat's a little bit more metal. And I think I like the second one. They're both pretty good. But I think I like the Romulan Ale, No Embargo Will Stop Us shirt. But drink on. but drink on the Twin Planets with that because I love that logo. Yeah, I think that's the one I like the best. Thirdly, I have a rather sincere, if not heavy, question for you. Let me preface this to give you some context. As you might recall, I mentioned how I was a casual fan. You just said I was casual. I would assume casual fan when Enterprise aired on television and a casual fan when Voyager aired on television before that. The thing which ignited my passion for Star Trek again, the only reason why I even dared to hope that Discovery would be any good, was because I watched Prelude to Axanar. Have you ever felt like Star Trek pulled its punches, that it squandered its opportunity to become equal to or surpass Star Wars, especially given the state of Star Wars these last couple of years, ending with Rise of Skywalker? It has been on my mind for some time now, but you gushing over The Empire Strikes Back prompted me to write this letter. Enterprise H, NCC 1701H. Well, Enterprise H, I really appreciate you talking about Prelude to Axanar. I'm incredibly proud of Prelude to Axanar because to me it was a perfect example of how, even though it was a fan film, it was a perfect example of how filmmaking is supposed to work. It was a group of talented people. I was asked to edit Prelude to Axanar by Christian Gossett. I had never met Alec Peters before this project. It was their brainchild. Alex's dream was Alec. Alec wanted to make this project for a long time, and I thought it was a really cool idea. And as far as Star Trek fan films, and I love the approach, the documentary approach, making it like Band of Brothers and Facing Ali and things like that. And so we made Prelude to Axanar. We raised the money. 2 months later, we shot it. And then 2.5 months later, we showed it at the San Diego Comic-Con. And what was fun for me is that it was, for me, like everything else, it was a hobby. And I didn't think much of it in the sense that it was an opportunity to be involved in this really cool fan film. And my creative involvement as an editor went way beyond that. I was also post-supervising, but I also was given a lot of creative leeway to make changes. And they gave that to me. Alec and Christian gave that to me and expected that of me. And they went with a lot of my choices and things that I, like there was no narrator. And then I figured we needed a narrator. And there's a lot of things in it that I wanted to add and put in, and they were all open to that. So it was a really great synergistic relationship with everybody, and everybody did a really great job. Alexander Bornstein created a great score. Mark Edward Lewis did a great job with the sound effects. Christian did a great job directing it, and so did all the people that Christian brought in. Everybody worked great, and it was conceived and it was executed well. And I will always be very proud of that process. And what was great about it was everybody knew what they had to do, and everybody was allowed to do what they did. And it was done quickly and effectively, and it was finished. And I really thought it stood as a, for me, it was the closest I will ever probably come to making something that I would consider to be what, tonally and stylistically, what I would have hoped a canonical. We were very much wanted to make canonical Star Trek. That was the whole point. And the idea was, obviously we wanted to make a feature fan film that would be thought of by the fan base as canonical, even though it wasn't. To me, I always looked at it I've always wanted to write a Star Trek book, so it was sort of my, I build spaceship models. It was my way to do something that felt like a good Star Trek novel. And it was a lot of fun to work, and I'm glad it inspired you. Look, I think the problem with all of these franchises is, with the one exception of Marvel, I feel that as a Marvel Comics fan, somebody who grew up with Marvel, they have a perfect person in Kevin Feige, somebody who worked on 13 Marvel movies before the MCU, who has a vision and works synergistically with his filmmakers, and all he's ever done is make money. The problem with all of these other franchises is they haven't had people. Look, the closest they've, I think, between Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and I'm not saying they're the end-all be-all, because I don't think that The Mandalorian is necessarily the end-all be-all of Star Wars. I like it, but it is not great to me yet. I think it has the potential, certainly a wonderful start. The same was true of Clone Wars. It got better as it went along. And the more I think the Clone Wars is good Star Wars. I thought Rebels was good Star Wars. And I think that The Mandalorian is good Star Wars. It could be great Star Wars. And what you need people creatives that really understand what they're doing, that can work under the auspices of their larger corporate minders, that the corporate minders cede the power to make the shows. They allow their creatives to do what they need to do. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a perfect example of how a franchise property should be handled in the modern age. It's overseen by Disney, but they allow Kevin Feige a lot of leeway, and he has had one success after another. The proof is in the pudding. The look at the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They average out to all making $1 billion. My problem with Star Trek is the people that control Star Trek now don't like Star Trek. They don't like what Star Trek is. They want to change it into something else. They want to let's make it more like Game of Thrones. Let's make it more like Star Wars. Let's make it more like all of these other things. They don't love Star Wars. I mean, they don't love Star Trek. And I would, like, if I was going to run, if someone came to me and said, Rob, if you can run Star Trek and you can do it however you want to do it, I would handpick a writing staff of 10 people, and I know who those 10 people are, that would make the best Star Trek show that ever. And that's where my problem with Star Trek is that the people that have been controlling Star Trek since Bad Robot took over, now Secret Hideout, don't like Star Trek. And they want to change it into what they think it is. And what they think it is not what Star Trek is, and that's my problem. So, it's not a hard question to ask. I don't feel like Star Trek is pulling its punches. I think the problem with Star Trek was the Berman era began by Gene Roddenberry. So all the way even to the end of Enterprise, that was the last vestiges of where Roddenberry started out. He was there, and you can talk about how the thing was, Rick Berman was trying through this entire time, through 18 years and 25 seasons of Star Trek, to preserve what Roddenberry started. He was trying to preserve that as much as he understood it. Did they want to break out a bit? Sure. But he was trying to preserve what Roddenberry's Star Trek was. The new people have no fealty to Roddenberry. They have no fealty to Star Trek. And that's my problem. And also, again, I feel that Star Wars they had corporate mandates, like this is how it has to be, and that's what Star Wars has been. What we needed was people like Favreau and Filoni, and there needed to be coordination with Star Wars from the very beginning. But Star Trek has needed that, unfortunately, and now it's just a money-making proposition. It's like, let's hold on to this as much as we can and make a lot of money. I get it. David Wong says, Yo, Rob, like you, I've been very disappointed with every recent incarnation of Star Trek, in my case, since JJ's Into Darkness. I thought Star Trek 09 was at least a fun popcorn flick with good production values. I'm looking forward to seeing what Noah Hawley might be able to do with the franchise. I love what he did with Legion Season 1. It was a fresh take on the X-Men universe with great characters and a well-told story. Haven't heard any news of late regarding his involvement with the new Trek film. Are you aware of any recent developments, and what are your hopes with his potential take on Star Trek? Live long and prosper, Sir Dave Wong. Well, Dave, thanks for writing in. I am not, like you, I probably watch the same YouTube channels. But for me, until I hear any confirmation, usually in the normal sources, Deadline, that these movies are moving forward, or that there's a start date for them, or whatever, I tend not to believe anything I hear. There's always an element of truth. I talk to people that actually work on these shows. You can hear from them, and no one ever really knows until it actually happens. But I haven't heard anything about new Star Trek. I love Noah Hawley, but you know what? I would love to get somebody who says, I've loved Star Trek my whole life. I want to work in the Star Trek space, and here's what I want to do. That's what I would love to see now. I'm waiting for the day when we will, in fact, get that. I don't know if that day will ever come. I hope it does. Burton Chan is here. Hi, Rob. I just saw the May 4th episode of Robservations on YouTube. Great episode. But you should get rid of the eyeglasses you wore in this episode. It makes you look like the U.S. Attorney General William Barr. Hey, man. Burton, I'm with you. These are $5 horrible glasses. I get them from Amazon, and I should probably, the dogs eat them. I'd love to get like Tom Ford glasses. I should probably, also work out and lose 50 pounds and get my beautiful face back. And maybe I'll do that. Maybe that'll be the summer things. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. but you're probably right. I did not wear these glasses. These glasses are completely utilitarian. There's no vanity involved in them at all, as you can see right now. Hey there, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity community, says Cinema Gulp. Cinema Gulp's here. Having recently watched your latest Elizaviews Whining About Movies episode on the beloved cult favorite Bound, I felt compelled to write you another letter. I've written you several letters in the past year, and much to my delight, you've read every single one of them. I'm a massive fan of the community you've created, and I respect it immensely. You've managed to be extremely entertaining and insightful about your craft, passion, and the business you're in, as well as give everyone a voice to share their own thoughts and feelings on this creative community. Oh, I appreciate that. That's what this is already. That's what I want to do. That's something a lot of YouTubers either cannot or are unwilling to do. Since reaching your 400th episode, congratulations, by the way, I wanted to give you a little bit of context as to why I'm so drawn to not only your channel, but many YouTube channels alike. Up until now, I've told you nothing about myself through all of my letters other than my love for Star Trek the Original Series and the fact that I wrote a novel recently that everyone hated. I've had my own YouTube channel for roughly 4 years, and I've had a lot of fun creating short films, mock trailers, and even my own music of cinema analysis show called Film and Vinyl. I'm drawn not only to the film and entertainment side of YouTube, but also the journalistic side. My adolescence, like yours, was filled with comic books, science fiction serials, and writing short stories. One of my favorite comics was the underread and underappreciated Marvel's Stalkers, which I believe was canceled before it got to finish a full run. Comics and short stories continued to be a part of my life, along with film, television, and music. I never played an instrument, but became obsessed with writing album reviews and articles. Having been a military photojournalist in Afghanistan and Iraq in 2002 and 2003, I found myself enveloped in the fantasy of it all. During that time, mostly on scratch paper, I started writing a novel. When I got out of the military in 2004, I went back to college and got a bachelor's degree in film editing from Columbia College, Chicago. Years later, I went into teaching broadcast journalism and editing on the Avid system. It was an adjunct gig, so it was perfect. Great hours, decent money, and I was just hitting my early 30s, so it was the perfect time to be teaching at a college, if you know what I'm saying. Several of my students would go on to be fairly famous broadcast news anchors in the greater Los Angeles area, as well as San Francisco, San Diego, and Michigan. Of course, I didn't teach them how to be anchors. I simply taught them how to use the Avid and how to use Final Cut to edit together their feature stories known as packages. Right around that time, I met a woman who later became my wife and then ex-wife shortly thereafter. Having such a short-lived marriage, I didn't take too long to try and get myself back out there. After several very short dating spurts and a couple of less than 6-month-long relationships, I realized indefinitely that I've been incapable of finding someone who shares even a minuscule amount of my passions and hobbies. I know that the importance of this is minimum when it comes to relationships. People learn to adapt or simply live with things their significant other enjoys. But for some reason, I've only attracted those who are the opposite of all the things I like. And it's become a big problem in my life. Love life. Forget about comic books and sci-fi serials. Some of the women that I date had never heard of Army of Darkness, for shit's sake. I'm not asking women to have read Bukowski or Rex Pickett. Rex Pickett. Was that Slob? Did he write Slob? But trying to find someone who has some creative passions or pop culture knowledge is much harder than it looks. Getting to the point, I've become a big fan of whining about movies with you and your lovely partner, Elizabeth. I love how the two of you go back and forth and have such differing perspectives on the films you choose to show her. Having been in school and getting her master's and hearing her articulate her side of film viewing, she seems extremely intelligent and knows how to go toe-to-toe with you. It's just a joy to watch, and I find myself longing for that type of relationship. At the same time, you guys clearly have some different passions. It's evident that her movie knowledge, though it may be decent, is definitely nothing like yours. Honestly, I don't know if there's really anyone that's an encyclopedia of cinema the way you are, Rob. Oh, I know them all, and I manage a few of them on the Schmodown. I'm not insinuating that it's the world's most perfect relationship. However, watching you the other day tell the entire Post-Geek Singularity how proud you were of her while reading off her straight A's was quite something. I think I saw this unique fire in your face as you told us. It made me feel happy. but also a bit sad. I want to feel that way about someone. Damn it, I have been looking. I try and express myself through my work and certainly through my YouTube channel. Thank you for the hard work you put in each and every day. It gives me inspiration to always do better. Be well, stay safe, and long life, the existential Mr. Rogers. P.S. If you are ever interested in checking out Film and Vinyl, I'll drop you a link below. I think you might like it. I would like it. The latest episode is a deep dive into the music, sound, and soundtrack of Joel Schumacher's 1987 The Lost Boys. Thanks for your time, kind sir. Cinema Gulp. Well, what a lovely letter, sir. Thank you for that. First of all, I'm going to put a link in the live chat. I would love to read that. I love I really did like the music for The Lost Boys. You know, the cover of People Are Strange and Cry Little Sister, and the cover of Jimmy Barnes and INXS song. Good Times. It's Good Times. It's a great soundtrack. I really loved that soundtrack when it came out. Well, you know, I mean, I think that I've been lucky in that in my life, I've had significant others who've put up with most of my passions. But, you know, what's interesting, Elizabeth and I are different kinds of people, and obviously Elizabeth's experience of the world is different than mine. I mean, she's a mother of 2 teenage girls. One girl on the cusp of her 20s, and the other is going to be a senior in high school. You know, she got married much, much younger than I did, and she's got the soul of an artist, and I think that's where, like, I know nothing about painting, and painting and fine arts is always something that I wished I could have done, but didn't. And she's somebody that's, I think, very accomplished, and you know, she put those passions on hold to be a mother. And one of the things that I really respect about Elizabeth is that she's not somebody who's like, well, you know, I'm just a guy, I'm resolving myself to be a mom, you know, I'm in my 40s now. No, you know, she just jumped back into going back to art center, and she's going to get her master's. She used to teach art to kids, and she wants to become a teacher. I mean, she wants to become, you know, an art teacher, and she also wants to paint herself. And I think she's a very talented artist. And what's great is I've always been attracted to people that are passionate about something. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if you're passionate about horticulture, or, you know, if you're a luthier, is it luthier or luthier? Making instruments, guitars, you know, whatever. If you're passionate about something, it doesn't matter what it is. I've always found myself attracted to both men and women who are passionate about something, and that they can teach me something, because I've always grooved on that kind of passion. And it was something that I found very what was neat about moving to Los Angeles is I had a few friends that were passionate about things. Even my friend, like Mike Schertz, was not necessarily passionate about movies. He liked movies, but he was passionate about the military. He loved military history, and he loved all of that. And he went straight out of high school. He went and became a Green Beret. He was passionate about 2 things. He wanted to find a cure for AIDS. He loved the idea of medicine, and he loved the military. So he went in immediately out of high school to the Green Berets, and he became a medic. And then after that, he went right into medical school, and now he's an ER doctor, and we were able to team up on the Crisis Medicine series. And I think that, you know, those are different interests than mine. He still loved movies. We would go to the movies together and tape movies, daisy chain our VCRs together. But I've always been attracted to people that are just passionate about something. Because, you know, to me, the world is really an interesting place. And I don't care, like, who you are. Like, I'll talk to anybody about anything. And just because there's lots of interesting stuff in the world. And to me, the idea of being around like on this planet is to experience what other people are passionate about. I mean, I'm passionate about storytelling and movies and all that, but my focus is pretty limited. I mean, the great thing about stories is that they're about people. So by definition, I'm interested in what anybody else is doing. But I think when you're passionate about something, there's something inside you that is content to pursue that passion. That passion is something that's outside of you that gives you pleasure, that gives you happiness. So there's always a part of you that has a happiness or a fire that's burning inside that makes you happy. And I think that's unique, and I think I'm attracted to those kinds of people. I've met a lot of people in my life that don't have that, and I've found that those kinds of people I don't get along with them as well, and I don't know if that's a function of where I grew up or the fact that my parents supported those interests, but all my interests, because my interests were like they all surrounded, but I like building models. But what that was is I loved the idea of miniatures and people that were also artistically inclined or whatever. So anyway, it's hard for me. Elizabeth is interested in things like she if you give her a book to read, she'll read the book and she'll be like, I was reading this book and I have these thoughts about it, and that's nice because if people ever ask me like, what are you thinking about? Like, what I'm thinking about is, the propulsion system of an Eagle transporter. Like, that's literally what I'd be thinking about. That's not what people want to hear. They're like, really? I'm like, well, yeah. How much thrust would be needed when Alan Carter was trying to get back to the moon after the nuclear waste dumps went up on the far side of the moon and pushed the moon out of Earth's orbit in space 1999. Like, did he have enough thrust? Do I believe that he actually could have made it back to Moonbase Alpha? Like, I will literally be thinking about that. I might be sitting in a room or by myself or something, man. So what do you think of? That's what I'll be thinking of, and then people look at me like I'm out of my mind. But that's So that's all I can say. There are lots of people out there that that's what you have to find. You have to find somebody that's passionate about something that isn't. It might not have anything to do with what you're passionate about, but there are people out there. There's a lot of people out there that are. And I've often found that those people are more fun anyway because they worry less about what other people think, and they're more interested in something else. And that means they'll have something to share with you, whether it's horticulture or whatever. But thank you for writing in. And let's see. Let me go over to what other people are saying. What is everybody else out there talking about? I have no idea. Let me go back to Calvin Bowles sends in four letters. Calvin says, most people who were not around in 1977 don't know that Star Wars was so big that people who hated sci-fi stood in line to see the sci-fi film. Oh, they did. And not only that, but if you didn't like science fiction, you probably liked Star Wars because it was like a fairy tale. It was really cool. It was, who didn't like it? Everyone got it. I mean, everybody grew up watching Disney movies and they got fairy tales. So even though it was space, the great thing about Star Wars, and I think the genius of Star Wars is about a farmer and a truck driver and a veteran of foreign wars. That's what it's about. And like everybody, you watch that movie, that's what you got into it. Sure, there's a princess. They set up the princess and the two servants, R2 and 3PO, and you get that. There's the royalty there. But for the most part, you immediately meet Luke. He's a farm boy. He's almost like the quintessential American. He's working on the farm. He has to work for his family because they need the money, and all of his friends have gone to school. And so you identify with that. And I think a lot of cultures have whatever the equivalent of that is. And then, you meet the old wizened Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was once a great man and now is, living in a shack somewhere. It was very relatable. So even though it was a science fiction movie and took place in space, it was more space fantasy, but everybody could relate to that. And you're absolutely right. Everybody went. Calvin goes on to say, when you saw Empire Strikes Back, how did you feel finding out this was part 5 when there was no 1 and 2 and 3? Well, first of all, okay, that's an interesting question. When Star Wars came out, there was a lot of talk and there was interviews. You'd found out about Journal of the Wills and all this speculation that Star Wars was part of a bigger story. And it was always like going to be a 9-part story. And then one of the re-releases, I'm not sure what the date was. I think it might have been, I don't know if it's 81. No. I mean, I think it was after Empire Strikes Back. I don't think that well, let's find out. Let's check. I mean, I my Star Wars knowledge here is limited on this question. When did Star Wars get retitled to A New Hope? Which re-release? 1981. Okay, so it was after Empire. When Star Wars Episode 4 New Hope originally hit theaters in 77, it was simply called Star Wars. It wasn't until the film's theatrical re-release in 81 that it received the Episode 4 marking and the subtitle A New Hope. So there you go. How did I feel about it? I thought it was kind of lame, to be honest. And I've never agreed with that idea. I think it should have just been called, Star Wars. Obviously, it'd have to be a sequel. When they were marketing Empire and the logo for Empire, which I love the logo, it would say Star Wars around it and Empire Strikes Back. I thought the first logo for Empire and the marketing was great. But when they said Episode 5, all of that felt like Monday morning quarterbacking. It was always retroactive to me. I've never liked that aspect of Star Wars. Because first 4 years and the first bootleg videotape I was watching of Star Wars, it was just Star Wars. In my mind, it's not A New Hope. It's just Star Wars. And I thought it was kind of lame. I mean, they just could have called it The Empire Strikes Back. I get what they were going for. But that, I think, was the beginning of what has become bad about Star Wars, is that all the changes that occurred. And the fact that Lucas... I mean, there's a case to be made that George Lucas, he's always wanted Star Wars to be something that it wasn't. Because of his collaborators, Star Wars turned out much better than it had any right to be. And it was also more for adults, for everybody. Instead of being just for kids, it was for the kids and all of us. Certainly Empire Strikes Back was much more adult. But then Lucas took back Return of the Jedi and made it more kid-friendly, more of what he wanted out of it. And I think that's what he's been doing ever since, is he wanted to turn it back into the kid-friendly thing that he saw. And the problem that everybody has is that we never wanted that. Empire Strikes Back was a movie for adults as well as children, just like Star Wars was. And George Lucas has wanted to pull the reins back, and that's why... and I understand it's his. It's his to do it with what he wants. But once you unleash that into the world, it is what it is. So I didn't like that. Calvin goes on to say, when you saw Empire, how did you feel the movie? How did you feel about the movie ending with a cliffhanger? At the time I saw it, that was the only thing I hated about it. See, I'll tell you, my feeling about it ending on a cliffhanger, I never felt that way as much as, yes, it did end with the situation that Han Solo had been captured, but I felt that the movie had a definite ending, which was Luke confronted Vader. And that was a story. I mean, it starts out in the beginning of the movie. You will go to the Dagobah system. There you will learn from Yoda, the Jedi Knight who instructed me. So it started out with that. And you have this journey where Luke does go through this journey, and he doesn't finish his journey with Yoda, but he leaves early and confronts Vader before he was ready, and Vader defeats him. So to me, the story of Empire does have a conclusion. The fact that it does have this extra added, well, Han Solo needs to be rescued, I saw that less of a cliffhanger and more of just a thread, a dangling thread. I didn't mind that at all, because what it meant was that we were going to get another Star Wars movie. When I first saw Star Wars, there was no guarantee. The one dream of it was like, God, I want to see another Star Wars movie. I want to see those characters again. What's going to happen? And Marvel Comics put out the comics, then the book Splinter of the Mind's Eye came out, and there was a hunger that was instilled in you, like, oh my God, I want to see more Star Wars movies. I want to see these characters again. And when they finally made another Star Wars movie, it was amazing. And what that did was, to me, it allowed, it solidified the idea that we would get a third Star Wars movie. So I actually loved it. I didn't hate that at all. Calvin goes on to say, one thing that always bothers me in movies is whenever you see someone in a mental hospital, they're always shown in pajamas, even when they're outside. And in truth, hospitals encourage them to dress normal. I know, I worked in two of them. Well, I can't speak to that, but I will trust you on that. I would think that any way that anybody who is either mentally ill or is incarcerated or in a hospital, for that, any sense of normality they could instill in somebody makes sense. So that makes sense to me. It's a movie trope to do that. Whether you're watching, 12 Monkeys, or whether you're watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I get it. I understand. But institutional garb is not something that is unique, I think. But I get it. Calvin goes on and says, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Empire Strikes Back was the first sequel that local news was covering stories about the lines of people the night before the opening. I remember one local station interviewing me about it. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. There was a fever I hadn't seen in my life. The world couldn't wait for Empire Strikes Back. Everybody was excited. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Willow sends in a tip and says, maybe this time will finally be the charm for New Mutants. Well, as everybody knows, the New Mutants has a new release date in August. I certainly hope so. I really want to see New Mutants. I'm so excited about this movie. And from everything we've seen from it, it looks really good. I know that Josh Boone was able to make the movie he wanted to make. And I just, for everybody that worked on the film, cheers to them and cheers to their new release date. Mukbang sends in a super chat and says, general support from the live chat. Well, thanks, Mukbang. You're very supportive of the channel. I appreciate that very much. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, with all the pop culture references, it makes it seem like something high school students have put together. It lacks a sense of professionalism. It sounds like elements of a fan fiction sci-fi story. What does? What I don't know. With all the pop culture references, I'm not sure I know what you mean, Stubble. Are you talking about Free Enterprise? No, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about the article I read. Yeah. I mean, look, the Palantir. Well, remember, all the people that work in the tech sector, we're all geeks. We're all imagination connoisseurs. That you can't not work in tech and not be a geek in some way, shape, or form. But it is, I think, a fan fiction sci-fi story. I think a lot of people now, one of the great things about the world we live in is that we're living in a sci-fi world. I mean, you can call a software company Palantir, and people are like, well, I know what that means, that's let's put a towel over it so it can't see. I think you're absolutely right, but I think that's kind of fun. I mean, my own production company is called Ludovico. It's not but it's just called Ludovico Technique, which is a Clockwork Orange reference. So I think everybody just does that. I think it's cool. It's cool that we do that. Claude is here. Ground Control Claudius to Major Rob. Bonjour, Monsieur Robert. Kava. I agree with you. Kobayashi Maru is not the best name for a tracking system. I'm guessing Kobayashi Maru was meant as a wink and a nod to other Star Trek fans in the whole Enterprise. Yes, I think so, Claude. It always is like, the no-win scenario. I don't want to have no-win software tracking our space junk. I don't think that's necessarily the best name. I mean, I do appreciate what they wanted to do for it, though. I do. I appreciate it. Ground Control Claudius goes on and says, there are many sci-fi terms used for military programs. Terms like Eagle Eye or Skynet may have already been used, but they may also have negative connotations. Can you think of a totally benevolent AI or tracking system in sci-fi? No. Well, I think we should all of our nuclear weapons should be controlled by the Whopper. Maybe in Her, what is the operating system in Her? They're kind of benevolent. But in sci-fi, yeah, I don't know if there's a benevolent. I mean, there are like Bishop in Aliens. He was benevolent. I don't know if you call him an AI, but he was. But a tracking system, probably not. I mean, sci-fi there's our healthy distrust, of the military and stuff. Claudius the Collector also goes on to say, Ground Control Claudius became Claudius the Collector in one message. Claudius says, why collect? Some want to cure cancer while others collect cars. Some climb mountains while others build financial empires. In Free Enterprise, the director character, Rob, makes movies and has sex. Why do we do these things? Because we can, Rob. Well, you know what, though? I mean, one of the things that I like is when I'm collecting something, to me, and I've said this before, whether it's an action figure or something, is it all represents other people's creativity. Like other people's, their imaginations and their flights of fancy. Every action figure every character was dreamed up by a writer or a combination of a writer or an artist. They're all manifestations of other people's dreams, and to me, that's what makes life worth living and sharing stories. I mean, I love movies, and even though I've had a career such as it is that hasn't been commercially successful, I've been very fulfilled as an artisan, being able to make things that people can see. I mean, you know, when I hear that letter from NCC 1701H, and he says he liked Prelude to Axanar. Now, I didn't direct Prelude to Axanar. I didn't think up Prelude to Axanar, but I was brought on to do my part in Prelude to Axanar, and I think by having me work on that short film, I think it was better than it would be if they just found any Johnny-come-lately editor. I think that I brought my love and my passion, and through my job as the editor and post-supervisor, and I was able to imbue that project with more love. Or, you know, if you go back and watch the one proof of concept scene that I did in one afternoon in a parking lot, if you look up Axanar the Vulcan scene, you know, even though that's only 3 minutes long and I had to replace my lead actress the night before and all of that, I mean, you'll get a sense of what I would have done with Star Trek even from that one scene. Now, I didn't make any money doing that or anything like that, but it stands as a testament to where I would go if I was ever afforded the opportunity to make Star Trek, official Star Trek. So all of this stuff, it represents things that I've liked or things that I enjoy that other people have created. So I'm constantly surrounded by other people's creations that inspire my own creativity. So I think you're right, because we can. You know, and a lot of people just think it's junk and they don't care. I mean, I got flying model rockets I made hanging from the ceiling. I've never even flown those rockets because you can't fly them within the LA County limits, but one day I will. One day I'm going to finish my 5-foot Saturn V that can go 10,000 feet, and you need an FAA waiver to fly it, because I think that would be badass. But you're right, because we can. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, this was asked to Campia on his show by someone, and I'd like to hear your answer to it. If you had the power to change movie history, would you want to have a hand in remaking the Star Wars prequel movies or the Star Wars sequel movies, and why? Wow, what a good question. You know what? I'd have to say the Star Wars prequel movies, because I would much rather work with the person who created the whole franchise than somebody who was hired to continue the franchise. And I think that the story of the prequels is really interesting. The idea of the transition between going from a republic to an empire, I love that idea. I think that I would, if my contribution would go in, and I would just want to bring out more of the humanity, and I would say let's if I was, what I would do specifically is concentrate on all the scenes between people. You know, I would try and bring more humanity to those scenes and more believability to those scenes, and make those people more relatable and less stilted. And I would take out, you know, I would do things like, I'll tell you something. Chris Gore sent me the script before it opened. Like, I want to say, somehow he got the script, I don't know, 4 months before Phantom Menace opened. And he sent it to me to read. And he said, put on your Star Wars soundtrack and read the script. And I really liked the script for the Phantom Menace. It wasn't much different. But in my mind, I would have directed it completely differently. And like, I did not read Jar Jar Binks to be sounding like Jar Jar Binks. I gave him an alien voice, but he spoke not as like, he was an alien character that in my mind was cool. Like, he was bad. I don't necessarily think I thought of him as some like Rastafarian guy. I mean, he was as capable. He was more like a Chewbacca character that spoke English. Like, he was like, everybody in that script was just a badass. And I didn't, all of the movie has all of this horribly stilted, you don't buy, and people are acting, they don't even seem like they're in the same movie, you know, and all of the character interactions, I don't believe them at all. None of the people, the Star Wars effects and all that are fine, but not one scene with the human being feels like it's real. I don't believe any human interaction or human alien interaction at all. So I would absolutely want to go back, because I think the problem that I have with the sequel trilogy is there's no story. There's literally no story there at all. And especially if you grew up reading the extended universe, starting with the Thrawn trilogy in the comics, like Dark Empire, it's like they don't even acknowledge. You don't have to acknowledge. If you want to get rid of the EU, get rid of the EU. But there are stories there that you could emulate. And when you watch Star Wars, I mean, the great thing about Star Wars is, if you go back and you watch Star Wars from a narrative standpoint, it's hard to do this now. But think about how the opening crawl is reiterated by the first 5 minutes of the movie. And the funny thing about it is, you've never seen C-3PO before, but you get him immediately. You know, and you're dropped right into the action. You're right when the first thing you see is the Tantive 4, and you see the Star Destroyer. You're boom. You're in the middle of. You don't even know what's going on. You don't know anything about anything when you're watching Star Wars. But as soon as you cut into the ship, did you hear that? They've shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. There'll be no escape for the princess this time. It's like boom. You know, you get it because you've read that thing, and you know exactly who. You don't know who C-3PO and R2-D2 are, but you know. They're these, okay, obviously they're on the ship, all hell is breaking loose, there's a battle happening, and you get it. You completely understand. And think about how the Phantom Menace opens. It opens with two Jedi at the height of their powers, arriving on a ship, walking into a room, and sitting down. Like, I just think to myself, why would you do that? You know, you're not even in the midst of an action scene. Like, I don't understand why there wasn't a pre-title scene or a sequence where you get to watch Obi-Wan. If I had made Phantom Menace, I would have said to George, you know, George, we've never seen in live action the Jedi before. So the opening of this movie needs to be like the opening of Indiana Jones, of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You need to see the Jedi being Jedi. And in Indiana Jones, he penetrates that temple, and he's a complete badass. And at the end, he's still not infallible. Belloc takes the idol from him. But in this case, we should see the end of a mission. The end, like the Jedi are they're finishing off. They're stopping a civil war. We should have opened that movie and seen Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, lethal weapon style, at the height of their powers, doing something. They're in the middle of doing something, and then they come back. And they meet the Jedi Council. We go to Coruscant. We meet the Jedi Council, which is badass. So audience is given ultimate Jedi-ness. And then they get dispatched on their new mission. And their new mission is to, hey, there's something going on Naboo. We don't know what it is. Why don't you go check it out? And so you already know these guys are awesome. They're already like super cops. You know, and you love these guys. And then they realize that they're in the middle of something else. Like someone tries to kill them. And they're like, what's going on? If you had done that, I think and if you approached, I would have said to George, you know what? These guys are buddy cops. The Jedi, you would look at a buddy cop paradigm in order to, if you're going to hang something on that, that's what these guys are. They're capable buddy cops. They're fun. We all love buddy cop stories. They're really good at what they do. And then we love them. We love Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and you make them relatable. You know, they're like, it's not, I'm too old for this shit. It's not Riggs and Murtaugh exactly, but they're more earnest, and they're really good at their jobs. But they're workaday Jedi. You like these dudes, and you've already seen them, and they're awesome. So you get it. Like, you love Indiana Jones, even though he has he makes the mistake of the fucking Frenchman in his beautiful linen suit in the middle of the jungle, takes away that idol. You already love Indiana Jones because everything he's done, he's capable. You know, he's able to, the guy who turns the table on him, we first see him, he comes out of the shadow with his whip, he disarms a guy, he penetrates the temple, Sapido tries to fuck him over, and he's awesome. And so you love Indiana Jones, and when he tumbles out after everything, and then he couldn't speak Jovitos, you know, and Belloc takes the thing. But you still love Indiana Jones. I would have said that's how you need to open. And I would have explained it to him in those terms. If I was his producer, I would have said, George, this movie has to have an Indiana Jones opening, a Raiders of the Lost Ark opening, so we know who these dudes are if we're going to follow them, because then you're with these guys, you're friends with them, you love them, and you've given everybody what they want to see, the Jedi being badasses in live action. And you could have even teased Darth Maul in there, and you find out that whatever it was at the beginning of the movie also ties in to what Palpatine's been doing later. But, you know, no one asked me. But that's what I would have done. So there's my answer, Stubble. The prequel trilogy. Robo Q-Man sends in a super chat and says, what is the status of the lawsuit from CBS and the agreement with the new Axanar film? I love Prelude, by the way. Well, Robo Q-Man, thank you. You know, I haven't been involved in that project since November of 2017. And by the way, I all the things that Alec Peters said about me are all untrue. I deny everything. I mean, the stuff that he said about me is, why you would ever say that to somebody who worked as hard as I did on that project and trying to sue me, it's just unconscionable, but whatever. Look, the status of the lawsuit was that it was basically a draw. CBS said you can't make a feature film, which is what I wanted to do. You can make 2 15-minute segments, and you can't crowdfund. You can't publicly crowdfund. That's what they said. So, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with. They're obviously, if you look at their latest trailer, I was directing the movie. They used all my effect shots. So I wonder if they're going to use them in the film, if I'm going to get credited as visual effects produced or directed by or something. I don't know. Interesting to see. But that's what they said. CBS said you can make 2 15-minute movies, and it was left there. Bob Quall says, a suggestion. I don't know if the other Post-Geek Singularity folks feel this way, but to me, have a better day or night sounds apologetic, as though our time with you is a downer rather than a highlight of the day that it is. Maybe something like, have an even better day. You know what? I have to tell you, I've always said, it was that greeting was on my answering machine, my outgoing answering machine. And when I was working as a freelance editor, Dan Bates, who later produced Free Enterprise, was looking for a freelance editor to cut a trailer for a movie they'd made called The Asphalt Quartet, which led to me working with him on that film. And he was just going through all the editors, you know, at post-production houses, they would have a list of editors. He left a message on my answering machine. And this is back in the late 90s. Like, I want to say it was 97. It was 97. And he left an answering machine. He says, listen, I want you to call me back, but the only reason I'm leaving a message for you is because you said, have a better day. I want to know what that means. And I always figured that no matter how good your day is, and from my perspective, it can always get better. So have a better day. I hope every day is good, but have an even better one. Who knows what's going to happen from now on? And that's why I always said that. I always said, have a better day. And it was Dan Bates who called me back, and I was able to edit this trailer. I'll tell you the story. Okay, so here's an interesting story. I probably told this story before, but so Dan Bates, who was one of the producers on Free Enterprise, he had produced a movie called The Asphalt Quartet that starred people like Daniel Benzali was in it, and James Russo was in it, and it was made by this guy Peter Rossi. It was his first and only film. And there was a lot of there was Paul Ben-Victor was in it. It was a low-rent Tarantino rip-off movie. And they needed a trailer cut for it. So because of that, I got this job. And here's a story of how things happen in Hollywood. So they asked me to cut a trailer. And I came in and I was given the Avid. I went to the post-production facility where they were editing the movie. So I had access to the entire film. And so there's the version of the film that was cut, and then there was also the whole film, and I thought the film was a mess. I thought it was really, really bad, to be honest. It was really terrible, and it was not well cut, and it was not. So I started looking around in what they had, and I thought certain scenes could have been much better, and I didn't like the structure of the movie, and it was just a terrible movie. But my job was just to cut a trailer. So I cut a trailer for this film. And then the man who paid for it, this guy named Mort Salkind, and he was kind of like the Jewish Tony Soprano. He's totally like a mob boss. He comes in and he watches the trailer, and he'd flown in from New York or New Jersey, wherever he came from, and I liked him. You know, I guess he liked me, and I showed him the trailer and Dan Bates' trailer, and they really liked my trailer. And he said to me, he goes, Mort Salkind says, well, what did you think of the movie? And I flat out said, look, I don't think this movie's good. And not only that, I think that there's a lot more of this movie that was not used that it could be better. It could be better. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. I really like your trailer and I like you. I'll pay your rate for 2 weeks. and I'm not saying that I'm going to go with your cut of the movie, but I'll give you 2 weeks, and I'll pay you like $2,000 a week, and I'll go with your cut of the movie if I like it. So basically, I went home like every third day. I stayed up as much as I could, and for 2 weeks I stayed at Midtown Edit, and I recut this movie called The Asphalt Quartet. It was retitled. You can get you can't get it here in the United States. It's like never released there. In Australia, I saw a DVD, and I always meant to buy one, but I didn't. It was called Heist, and I recut the movie. Now it still was terrible, but I think I made it less terrible. So when they watched my cut of the movie, they really liked my cut of the movie, and this is the most hilarious part. So. So when they watched my cut of the movie, they really liked my cut of the movie, and they said, Mort Salkind goes, we're going with your cut of the movie, but I want to ask you one thing. He says, the movie really should open with an action scene. And I said, yeah, it probably should. And he goes, well, can you make one? And I'm like, there wasn't one shot. I mean, what do you want me to do? He goes, well, yeah, but you can edit. Can't you make something up? Can't you create something in the edit bay? And so, so what I did was there was a blown take. There was a blown take where one of the actors is running down and Glenn Plummer, the actor Glenn Plummer, black actor, Glenn, who was actually in Pastime. And he was in Showgirls. So Glenn Plummer, there's a scene where he's running down the alley and he, trips. Falls in a garbage can. So I cut together this, audio montage over black, and then cut into it. And you hear gunshots and sirens and all this stuff. And then I have, running down this alleyway. And he trips and falls. And then I made a title card in Photoshop. That said The Asphalt Quartet, and then so the title card slams on, and then I made little gunshots graphics with light lens flares coming through, so you'd see The Asphalt Quartet, and it's like I mean, it was some bargain basement shit, let me tell you. He loved it. He loved it, and he thought I was a genius. And he goes, what do you want to do, kid? What do you want to do? And I pitched him on this idea of this I wanted to make a Jewish horror movie. And the same way that Catholicism informed vampire mythology, I wanted to make a Jewish horror film called Day of Atonement. It's too late to be forgiven. That would deal with Yiddish folk tales and the Yeni Welt and Asmodeus and Lilith and the Lamed Vav and all this stuff. And Mark Altman and I, who made Free Enterprise, we went and wrote that script. We were going to make that movie. So there you go, Bob. There's a long story about where did Have a Better Day come from. Well, there you go. Now you know. Yeah. So anyway, Omar94 is here. Hi, Rob. This is a very hard letter for me to write, as I struggled to put my thoughts to words in a way that makes sense, but here goes, I'll do my best. Movies, TV, comics, video games, etc. are great escapist entertainment, which can help us feel better, as they provide a good distraction from the world. These YouTube shows, like yours and John's, are also good escapist entertainment for me, which gives me a distraction from the real world. While that's true for me, I guess I feel a little disappointed when I'm finished watching movies or TV shows that have good endings, as I'm now back in reality. Maybe it's because I'm an escapist freak, as I wish the worlds made up in movies and TV shows were real, and that I could live in them. I think we all do. For example, in movies, I really like Avatar, and I wish Pandora was real, and I wish I could live there. I remember when Avatar came out, I read how audiences developed depression because they couldn't visit Pandora. I really like It's a Wonderful Life, and I wish Bedford Falls was real, and I could live there, as it's portrayed as a pleasant place to live. There are other examples, but Bedford Falls and Pandora are just two. In television, I really like The Andy Griffith Show, and I wish Mayberry was real, and I could live there, as everything seems more pleasant, and the way the characters are portrayed make it feel like a nice place to live. There are other examples, but Mayberry is just one. Do you feel that way when you watch certain movies and TV shows? As someone who has depression and anxiety, I really enjoy movies and TV shows for the entertainment, but also for the escapism and distraction, as it's very hard for me to fit in with people, even those I know and see a lot, like my family. I hope that makes sense, as I spent many times having to rewrite parts of it for it to make sense to me. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, it's a great letter, and I absolutely think it makes sense. I've wanted to live on the Enterprise since I was a little kid. I've wanted to be, for me, it's not places to live so much as it is I would like to be those people. Like, I would like to have been Captain Kirk. I felt like if I was Taylor in Planet of the Apes, I might have been able to make peace with the apes, I would have been able to get Dr. Zaius on my side sooner. I want to be James Bond. I'd want to be Han Solo. It was always like, I want to be those dudes. If I was on the Nostromo, I would have been like, guys, we're not sitting down in LV-426. And maybe I would have been able to take Ripley out on a date later. I mean, but that's kind of how I thought about it. Like, I've always thought about living in movies. Like, what would that have been like? What would it have been? Or comic books. Like, hey, man, it would have been really cool to be Nightwing and have Starfire as my girlfriend. I think that would be cool. Or I'd love to have been an X-Man, I would love to have been an X-Man. I would have loved to have been Scott Summers. And Jean Grey would have been my girlfriend. I would have loved that. But I think that's natural. But I've never, like, I like escapist fare, but it never took away from my experience of the real world. But I understand. I understand why, because I think that's a great part of storytelling, is that we get caught up in the stories. We want to live in those stories, or we want to be a part of that. I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's really great. And by the way, it's interesting because Omar did write a letter. Well, I'll get to it. Just a Brown Girl is here. Hello, Just a Brown Girl. How is your movie projects going? Hi, Rob. Happy Thursday. I've been reflecting lately on my good fortune to find a community that is post-geek. I think I would fail the entrance exam for geekdom. Geekhood? Geekness? Anyway, I have this friend, my brother from another mother, who possesses an unsettling savant-like ability to remember lines or to remember times and places in movies, and often taunts me with his certainty. We've known each other a long time, and lately, every time I think about challenging his recollections, I think about Robservations, a show with people like R&B who can name filmmakers, foreign and domestic, Blu-ray versions, years movie came out, and all the minutia. Then I'm reminded that people like my BFF do exist, so I don't even try. My BFF is a devout Star Wars fan. His unabashed love for all the films is intimately tied to his memories of his father. Ooh, that's nice. I have learned to tamp down my deconstruction filmmaker crit. He is a guy that loves his physical media too, and his Funko Pops and his soundtracks, and he always found these really cool novelty t-shirts. I don't know anyone like that. I remember hours of our childhood spent in shopping malls, looking for exactly the right Star Wars Christmas ornament, the official ones. How did he know? An ornament is an ornament. But he did know because he's a geek. And while I never understood it then, I realized that I admired his tenacity. We shared that even into our adulthood. We can be single-minded to a fault. And I dare say it has served us both quite well. But minutia was never my bag. I love sci-fi and fantasy and action stuff, but for me, memory is visceral. The movies that were formative for me were so because the way they made me feel. Because I feel the same way about them today. I don't remember where I was or when I saw it, but I remember the first time I saw a lady action hero. She kind of acted hard like a man, but she still screamed and cried and was afraid sometimes like a girl. She was smart, often smarter than the men around her. She was willing to fight alongside men, but she never let me forget she was a girl. She bonded with the little kid when the men didn't know how. She listened to the kid, which again made her smarter than the men. And then the climax of the movie comes and she steps out of the steam and shadows like a frickin' Terminator. Get away from her, you bitch! It was the first time a movie had ever made me feel such exhilaration. And I still feel that way every time I see that scene, even though I've seen it countless times before, even though I know it's coming. It's my first vivid memory of a woman being so convincingly heroic. Damn, she deserved that Oscar. I don't remember when it was, and I don't remember where. My dad had the four of us for the weekend, and we went to see this movie. It started out innocently enough, and it quickly got creepy, and then it became truly terrifying. There were these kids, and they went boating even when they weren't supposed to. The sheriff's two sons were out there as well, and there was something under the water eating people. But the part that shook me, when Ellen Brody and the deputy find the trembling blonde girl hiding in the bottom of this tiny sailboat. And when they try and pull her out to safety, she doesn't want to go. She lets out this blood-curdling shriek, "Shark!" And I lost my shit. It curdles my blood to this day. By the way, can you believe that movie is PG? That shit scared me for life. I mean, it ate a girl whole. Now that I think about it, the scene might be the reason I never learned to swim. I don't remember where I was, but it must have been a Thursday night. Dr. Green had this pregnant patient whose complications kept snowballing on him. Oh, I know what you're going to say here. No matter what he fixed, something else went wrong. He couldn't get anyone from OB to come over and help, and this couple, featuring a young Bradley Whitford, was so great that everyone, all the orderlies, I'm getting chills, I know exactly what you're talking about. All the orderlies and nurses and interns were growing more and more frantic because they didn't want this woman or her unborn kid to die. Then Ming Na knocks over a tray of instruments, and Dr. Green has to say, "Oh, everyone, just take a deep breath, all right?" And every character in the room stops. In a show famous for the fast medical talk and swiveling camera, the action just stops dead in its track. Half a minute later, Dr. Green begins again slowly. I'm getting chills as you're describing this because this is my favorite episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of TV ever. Half a minute later, Dr. Green begins. It blew me away. I couldn't believe this. I could not believe this hour of TV. Half a minute later, Dr. Green begins again, slowly, clearly dictating instructions to the frazzled ER staff. I couldn't believe it. The writer, the director, Mimi Rogers, by the way, somebody decided to bring this locomotive to a grinding halt only to successfully ramp up the tension all over again. So I start to freak out again. Is this poor lady really going to die? Love's Labor Lost was the 19th episode. I have chills. I couldn't, just like you. Love's Labor Lost was the 19th episode of the first season of ER. It's agonizing every time I watch it. It is one of my favorite episodes of hour-long episodic television ever. I was left... pardon me, let me finish. It's agonizing every time I watch it. I get scared every time I watch it, which is crazy, right? Because I know how it's going to end. That episode of TV, I think I saw... I didn't see it when it was first aired. I might have watched the repeat during that first season of ER. I could not believe what I was watching. I just sat there slack-jawed. I couldn't believe how... I didn't even know what the fuck eclampsia was. I mean, I had to go find out about it. Man, that episode, Brown Girl, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. This is when I began being interested in minutia. Who directed this? Mimi Leader, a woman. How did she do that? How did she just stop the action at the climax and ramp it up all over again? Successfully. How did I find myself on this amazing emotional roller coaster? And how do I learn to do that when I make my movies? Where do they teach this beautiful emotional turmoil? There's something wonderful and amazing about how geeks can hold numbers and dates and issues in their heads to be recalled on command. But if I can taint people's souls with emotional residue like those in film and TV moments did for me, if I can make people lose their shit like the world lost its shit over Jon Snow, then I'm okay with pros like you and my BFF and other members of the PGS handling the minutia. I can keep being the visceral girl. But I want to do that too, by the way. That's what I want to be able to do that. I don't know if I ever can, but Love's Labor Lost, Mimi Leader, knocking it out of the park. And by the way, when she made The Peacemaker, I was like, all right. I expected more. I love Deep Impact too. Okay, housekeeping. Excellent Quibi rant. All of them. The reason no one knew this would fail, if it does fail, is the cost-sunk fallacy. Sometimes it's pride, oftentimes it's hubris, but for whatever reason, smart people do stay the course rather than course correct. They've gone too far to fail. Who wants to admit to a fiasco when the chances of failure are only 85%? I don't know, man. I thought the whole thing was... Next to Willow Yang. When I was 14 years old, I discovered coffee, and I wrote my first novel. It was called In Love with a Mystery. It took me a year to write. It was around 30 chapters and only about 10 people have ever seen it. Yet it is one of the proudest pieces of work I've ever created because it taught me what I was capable of as an artist and a writer. Now that we're in a new century, I'm thinking about scanning the manually typed chapter pages and possibly self-publishing. I don't know if it's any good, if it holds up over decades, but why not? If it's something you've always wanted to do, Willow, I hope you give it a try. Sorry for the super long letter and for any repetition in topics. I've been trying to get this letter out for weeks, but work has been nuts. Thanks for reading and letting me hang out. I am just a brown girl. I don't think you're just anything. What a great letter that is. Thank you for writing that in. I love hearing letters like this. What an enriching bunch of letters you people have sent me today. There's a couple more I want to read. Omar sent in a second one. Omar says, "Hi, Rob. I know you once mentioned you like the Phantom Menace script. It's weird that I ended up talking about this and you wrote this in. I didn't end up liking the movie. I'm curious to know if you ever got a chance to read George Lucas's original Phantom Menace script before he reworked it into what we saw on screen. It's not available, but information on it is available online. I have. While there is no proper script, having read what the original script was like compared to the movie, I think it would have made a better movie than what we got. I can guarantee you it did. I don't dislike the Phantom Menace, but I don't think it's good as well. The original script was called The Beginning, with Obi-Wan as the main character, as well as being a bit older than in the movie. Jar Jar being tolerable instead of annoying, and an older, less annoying Anakin, and a more talkative Darth Maul. That's true. That's what I read. Having read what was in the script, it would have made a more serious and mature movie than what we got. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Yes, and I completely agree with you. It would have. And what I read was better. It was just better. And yeah. Ian Samuels has a letter today. Rob and fellow Robservationists. Today, I would like to present to you one of the best horror movies of the century so far. High praise, but I think it deserves it. It is 2012's Sinister. I think Sinister is great. True crime writer Ellison Oswalt, played by Ethan Hawke, a character named after the writer Harlan Ellison, has been struggling with writer's block, and without telling his family, he has them move into a new house, where multiple murders taken place in an attempt to find inspiration for a new book. His family begins to have horrific experiences at the house, and he finds a box of 8mm films in the attic. He transfers them to his computer and discovers that the killer had been active in other areas, but if it was the same killer, the murders date back to the 60s. Then his son wanders into his office where he'd fallen asleep and left the door unlocked, and on the computer is the footage from the murders in that house and where the bodies had been hung up in the garden hanging from a tree. His wife is furious, as they've discovered his real reason for buying the house. But no spoilers. Tension is built in an expert way. The way the story unfolds feels organic. The evil killer is indeed sinister, perfectly inhabiting this movie. The movie has the best ever use of the found footage trope, almost entirely killed by Blair Witch. Perhaps I am biased, as the main character is a writer, which draws me in. Maybe it is due to the fact that my wife, who hates horror, was the one who introduced me to this movie, and perhaps it is because it is a horror movie that we watched together. But I love this movie. I think it's great. It does not surprise me that the writer of this movie, C. Robert Cargill, was inspired by a nightmare he had after watching The Ring. It also doesn't surprise me that on a small budget of an estimated $3 million, it made more than $80 million. I'm a little disappointed by the Rotten Tomatoes, who scored it only 64%. But as far as I'm concerned, if you love horror, and I do, especially if you like found footage type horrors, you will love this as much as I do. One interesting fact: the killer is a demon called Bagul, which, according to Cargill, a Middle Eastern word for boogeyman. The only translation I could find for it was Bagul being a Somalian word that means butterfly. So perhaps the demon Bagul has a connection to the butterfly effect theory. Anyway, another movie I highly recommend. Well, Ian, I loved Sinister. I thought it was really, really good, and I completely agree with you. Absolutely. Let me see. So yes, I agree. Let's see. Yeah, there's a few more here. Roberto Suarez is here, and he says, cracking up listening to the Asphalt Quartet story. Here's a little something for the laughs. Well, thanks for that. Cheers to you, Roberto. Sifo Claudius says, yes, Lucas's prequel scripts and direction were awful. But it wasn't, the Phantom Menace script wasn't awful. I know it seems crazy to say that. I think the biggest mistake was making Jar Jar the kid-friendly comedy relief. Oh, man, you said it. It really annoyed adult fans. I think Jar Jar could have resembled the surfer Rastafarian, maybe even a benevolent drunk. Yeah, I mean, Jar Jar could have been, but when I read it, the idea that they made an alien, like, I never thought, in Star Wars, the alien characters were pretty interesting. In Jedi, they got goofy. But in Empire and Star Wars, the alien characters, like, look at Greedo. Greedo was kind of goofy looking. I mean, he's a Rhodian, but he was, going somewhere solo. I mean, even the dialogue was cool. Yes, I was just about to see your boss. Tell Jabba I have the money. Give it to me. I might forget I found you. I mean, it was that exchange. Greedo was kind of goofy, but because of his personality, he was cool. He was cool. And and when Solo fried him, it was because Solo killed Greedo because Greedo threatened his life. And you think the idea that retroactively, this is when Lucas is like, I don't want to make Han Solo a murderer. He didn't want to be a murderer. He wasn't a murderer. His life was threatened. Greedo was going to kill him. It was a rough bar. People got killed. I mean, in that bar fights, gunfighters, gunfighters gunned each other down all the time in Western films. And Star Wars, if anything, amongst all the other stuff it was inspired by, it's also a space Western. So the idea that they would do this is right out of Westerns, and how many people get killed in Westerns. It was a mistake to change that. I understand why George Lucas did, but that was the beginning of, I think, all of the wrong-headed mistakes George made as he became a father and got older. I mean, anyway, but yeah. And he dumbed it down. And making Jar Jar the whole reason that Star Wars appeals, again, you know what appealed to kids? Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and R2 and 3PO and Princess Leia. They appealed to kids. When you start pandering to children and when you turn Phantom Menace into a pandering movie to kids, you wrecked it. You wrecked it for kids and adults. And I understand kids now like that stuff. I know. I don't want to take away from them. But I think you're right, Sifo Claudius. It could have worked, Claude. If they did something, so bad. And all the kids are terrible. Everything is so bad and stilted and awful. Sifo Claudius says, however, I like the Star Wars fan theory that Jar Jar would be identified as a Sith with a drunken master style, and the one who pretended to be Master Sifo Dyas, the Jedi, who commissioned the clones on Kamino. The Mirror Universe Star Wars was great. Yeah, it could have been. It could have been great. Hassan sends in a tip and says, hello, Bougainvillea Whisperer. Yes, we plant bougainvilleas in the backyard, and I do grow them. You're not alone. I usually have thoughts like, what the fuck? All the stuff I own, it's just matter that was changed from one form to another. Wow, my laptop was a rock once, and stuff like that. Yeah, it's funny. Look at all the trees behind me. Oh my God. Attic Booby Hatch sends in a tip and says, if you were one of the book people in Fahrenheit 451, who would you be? If I was a book person. Well, I guess if I was a book person, I would have to be. I'd have to be a sci-fi person or a fantasy person, I guess. I don't know what book. If you're asking me what books I would memorize, and speak, I don't know. But it probably wouldn't be something. I would be the guy who would have made the case that pulp fiction and pulp novels and all that would be the books. They're worth preserving too. I'd be that dude. Probably. Yeah. Yeah. That's who I would probably be, I think. I mean, yeah. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me, of course, to the end of this show. Don't forget, you can still enter. You can win this JBL Bar 9.1 surround sound system soundbar with Dolby Atmos. All you have to do is enter in the description below. You can find the link. One more day after tomorrow, I'm gonna announce on my birthday show tomorrow, and you can still enter. No purchase necessary. I just thought I'd bring that up once again. Thanks to Connie and the Experiential Engagement Division of Harman International. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to do that for the channel. It's very cool. And so, with the end of Robservations 416, I'm not on John Campion's show tomorrow, I should tell you, and we're going to move. We're going to move Whining About Movies until Saturday, and then I think like tomorrow at 5 o'clock or something, I'll have a link. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to have like a Zoom birthday party. I know people like even having a Zoom birthday party has become cliche, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to like figure out how to get like 300 people. Whoever wants to come in, I'll send out the link. Everybody join. Come on in tomorrow. I don't know how a 300-person Zoom party would even work. And I'll be sitting here eating the awesome cheesecake that Claude sent me, which is so good. I've dipped into that. Claude and Candida sent me. It's so good. But yeah, so there we go. I want to thank the moderating staff, as always, Mike Bodden for making sure I get these letters. I want to thank Detective Jim Boyers and his wife Heidi. I want to thank Greg Smith for just being Greg Smith and for being first in line with me in front of the UA 150 Theater in 1985 to see all 3 Star Wars movies. I want to thank, of course, Jordy Lyons and Louis Yu for being great men. And, of course, the Richard, I want to thank for just being a cool guy and for obviously administering the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page and having watch parties and all of that kind of thing, and the Post-Geek Singularity page. Thank you all for that. And I want to thank all of you imagination connoisseurs that make this channel possible and send me these lovely letters. What a bunch of great letters. I want to thank also, once again, Trinidad the Island Man for sending me this quarantine wine. Quarantine wine that comes from the Kutchers, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. And you can go to, it's Wine with an Impact. You can go to officialquarantinewine.com, and all of the profits they make go to COVID-19 relief places, which I think is pretty damn cool. So how awesome is that? So there you go. And this brings an end to Robservations episode number 416. Will not be on John Campion tomorrow. I will be doing my show, though, my birthday show. My second birthday show I've done. Wow, that's pretty crazy. Actually, I don't know if I was on for my birthday yesterday or last year. I don't know. But, yeah, thanks for being here. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.